So Miguel, welcome to the CareerNerds podcast here in Dallas, Texas. Thanks for coming up from San Antonio. You've had such an interesting background. After the military, you worked in recruiting and coaching, and then you were selected as the founding director of the West Point Association of Graduates Career Services. That's such a fascinating role that you stood up this department, and then you joined us at CareerNerds as a head coach 3 years ago. Let's talk about what led up to that job at West Point, and why did they select you for being the founding director?
Well, Tom, thank you first for having me here today. Throughout my career, I've always been interested in giving back to fellow graduates and to fellow veterans, whatever their rank, wherever they came from, just to help them out. So I've always volunteered in different capacities throughout my career with different organizations. And then in 2002, when I joined Lockheed Martin, I got the opportunity with two other individuals to stand up the first corporate-wide military outreach program, which was pretty much the first in the industry back before, hiring, transitioning veterans and everything was a thing. So we stood up that whole program across all 5 divisions of Lockheed Martin, and it was a huge success. And helped run that for about 8 years. And then after that, I left Lockheed Martin and I had my own company assisting commissioned officers, regardless of commission and source, to help them in their transition and find opportunities in corporate America. And then from there, with all that experience, a fellow graduate reached out to me and told me about an opportunity at the West Point Association of Graduates that they had received a sizable donation to stand up a truly first bona fide career services outreach program to help alumni, which they felt was an area that was lacking within the organization. And so I was sort of recommended to apply for the position. And I went up there and I talked to the CEO and I met the rest of the staff there. And I think, that background of having done that at Lockheed Martin and my volunteer service, in addition to having my own company helping officers make that transition, regardless of their rank, really played a key part in, being selected for that position and standing that organization up. And I started in August of 2018 and we were up and running by April 1st of 2019. So we moved pretty quick there. But I had a great staff, fellow other West Point graduates to join my staff. And it was an incredible experience really setting that up and helping hundreds of graduates all over the world across all ranks.
That's such a great experience that you had, because West Point teaches people how to be leaders. We both went to West Point. But then we go into the military, we have a lot of training, but when we get out, there's not a lot of support from our alma mater, and so you helped create this. What were some of the things that you found made you successful in terms of standing up this career services department?
Well, the first thing was I had a really great team. 2 fellow graduates, Julia Ruddock, who's class of 2007, and Scott Leishman, who's class of 77. So they were really helpful in providing different inputs and experiences from their own backgrounds, because they had both been in recruiting in the past. And I think one of the key things that really helped in forming this was my goal was to establish partnerships with organizations, with companies, to establish direct lanes so that our grads could be talking directly to decision makers within those organizations, therefore bypassing HR and talking to people who can give them the inside information about this is what life is like in the corporate world. This is what you can expect. Because for many graduates, they don't know what they don't know when they make that transition. And so this was a way to shorten that path to talk to people in different industries, in different lanes, if you might say, so that they can get the right information and make a smart decision of where they should go. And that we wanted to establish timelines so when people should start planning for this before they get out of the military. We were telling people they need to start planning 12 months out, 18 months out on there. So that was key, establishing those partnerships, having a really great team, and of course, having the support of the AOG itself and all the societies who really connected with me and wanted me to provide them materials and resources so that they themselves could establish small mini career services chapters or subchapters within their organizations to help. So that two-way street really facilitated the program really being successful right off the bat.
I really like how you explained that to me. You're like me. We both like helping West Pointers, like helping military academy grads from Naval Academy and Air Force and vets in general. What about that inspires you, that gives you fuel every day to help academy grads?
What fuels me is when you help somebody, you're not only helping them, you're helping their family, right? So you're putting them on a path to success. And there's nothing better than down the road, one of these individuals you've helped calls you back or sends you an email and says, hey, thank you for all your help. I found a really great job. It's going to really help my family. I've got a career now, and it really couldn't have been done without the support that your organization was able to provide me. And you gave me the tools so that I can be successful beyond this initial job on here. So getting that kind of feedback like that is just, it's icing on the cake and really makes me get a big smile on the face that, I had a direct impact on somebody's life. And now that person can pay it forward and help somebody else. So it just spreads out throughout the academy community. And I just like doing that and helping people.
I think we learned that at West Point. There is no I in team. It's about helping each other. Mm-hmm. And the best thing is about helping people succeed and seeing their success and knowing that I was a small part and contributed to that. You've got a lot of great stories. Do you want to share some of those stories? Back when you were AOG, I think Love's Truck Stop was one of them, right? That was such a good story. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we had an individual, a graduate, reach out to us. I don't know if I can say his name, but his name was Adam Ramos. And he had transitioned out of the military, used one of those military transition firms that we're all familiar with, and they had put him to be a general manager at a Love's Truck Stop, which, of course, when you're transitioning out, you're thinking, I'll just take the first job, right? And so he took that, which is very common among graduates who are transitioning. And after a few years, he determined that, being a truck stop manager is not my goal in life. He majored in civil engineering. He wanted to go back into the engineering field itself. But of course, by using the old strategy of passing out resumes, the first thing everybody saw at the top of that resume was truck stop manager.
And that's not really going to help him get that next level job.
Right. He wants to go back into an engineering firm. And of course, HR, recruiters, the algorithms, all they see is truck stop manager, and he's automatically disqualified. So he came to us and said, I need help. I've been doing this for a year, sent out hundreds of resumes. I'm not going anywhere. So we worked with him, and we basically reinvented him to create a value proposition story and to get him connected to other graduates who understand what he brings to the table as a West Point graduate. Character, leadership, integrity, the ability to get things done, smart, right? I said, if we can get you connected to other graduates, they will be the people who then can connect you to decision makers and bypass HR and recognize what you bring to the table and that you can learn what you need to learn. But the leadership and all that you already have inherent in you. And he mentioned a particular company he was interested in. And I said, have you looked to see if there's a graduate there? He says, no, I've never bothered to look. So I said, all right, let's do a search and see if there's any graduates there. And there happened to be a graduate that did work there. Chief of staff in the company, all right? And I said, that's the person we want to talk to. So long story short, I got him to connect with that individual. The chief of staff said, hey, come and meet me face to face. Let's talk. They had a really great conversation. The chief of staff said, hey, I want you to meet my boss, the president, all right? I want to introduce you to him. I think you'd be a really great addition to our team, even though you've been a truck stop manager. But you've got the drive, the initiatives, the smart, and all that we like in people to join our organization. Long story short, he gets hired for exactly the same job he had applied to and had been rejected for. So it just goes to show, establishing those connections, not relying on a resume, and being able to sell yourself and meet people face to face, that's what gets you across the finish line. Resumes don't.
I really like this story because a lot of people think, hey, if I send my resume out to enough people, they'll pick it up. But it's really about meeting the right people, connecting the dots. And like you gave the example with Adam, if you're networking the right way, people will look for how you are a fit rather than why you aren't. And if you're applying for jobs and using your resume to market yourself, the number one goal of companies is to screen out, because they got to screen out hundreds, if not thousands of people. And so networking is the way to go. Let's talk about your career. You already talked about how networking, you were recommended for director of AOG Career Services. Give me another example of how maybe during the networking process, you were thinking like, oh, this is not going to result in anything. But then you were so surprised that it actually got you an amazing job offer.
Well, I would think, and something like that. I've never had a case where it was like, I didn't think it was going to really work. I always had confidence that it would. And I learned very early on in my career that networking was the key to success. So I've been laid off 6 times. And every one of those instances, I was able to find a job very quickly. And I moved up. I got better salary. So it always worked out. But it happened because I knew people knew me, and I networked. When I got laid off the very first time from a company, I got laid off on a Friday. I had a brand new job on Monday with Northrop Grumman, in fact. And I never interviewed. I never even met the manager, but he was a West Point graduate. We connected, and he said, I like what you've done, what your background is. Just come and join my team.
Wait, that's really quick, from Friday to Monday.
Yep.
Tell me exactly how it happened. Like, when did you contact that person, and when did the interviews happen?
Well, here's the power of having a strong network. Opportunities come to you also. So he found out that I had been laid off through the West Point network because I had been the speaker. I'd been the youngest grad speaker at the Founders Day earlier in that year. So people knew me, and I'd always kept in contact. And also I had been volunteering during that year while I was employed to talk to different organizations and help transitioning people. So people were starting to hear about me. So he heard through that network that I had been laid off on a Friday. So he called me unsolicited and said, why don't you come and join my team?
Wait, so it happened like that? You were laid off on Friday. He calls you on that Friday, and Monday you start?
That's true.
That is an amazing story. Like, talk about the speed. You know, Stephen Covey, I think his son wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And when you have a lot of trust and you network the right way, people will accelerate your success, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it happened over and over and over again. I'm probably the only person I've ever known, or be hard pressed to find somebody else that got a job at Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, American Airlines, and Walmart. And out of all those companies, I interviewed one time. Because all the other jobs I got because I networked and I knew somebody or somebody knew about me. And so I don't do interviews. I don't like them. I want to avoid HR. HR is not your friend because, like you mentioned, they are just establishing barriers to eliminate as many people as possible, right? So we don't want to try and go crash the front door. We want to go back like they taught us back at West Point. Flank the enemy. This is HR. Find the weak spot and come in through that. Flanking them is finding a decision maker in the organization who can tell HR, this person is now my new XYZ, get the paperwork done. That's what we want to have happen because then it shortens that timeline immensely.
Yeah, I like how you said do a flanking maneuver. What I've heard is not to go in the front door, but go in the side door because very few people are going in the side door. That's sort of the VIP entrance. The front door is where everybody's lining up with applications and resumes, right?
Right.
So why doesn't that work? I mean, today it's easier than ever to get a lot of resumes. It's easier than ever to apply. People might apply for hundreds of jobs, but there's hundreds of thousands of people applying for every single job. I saw a stat that for every job posted, there's about 300 or 400 people applying for that. So, you know, just the numbers game makes it seem like it's against you, right?
Right. It's because that ease of accessibility to apply electronically, right? LinkedIn has that function where you can do a one-click application. And because it's made it so easy, so many people now apply, and the majority of them aren't even qualified for the jobs, but they're just clicking it anyway because they're just doing click. And when people do that, they feel they've got a sense of accomplishment, like I've really done something. Yeah. But it's not. It's really, you're totally dependent and reactive to the decisions of other individuals, i.e. a recruiter or an algorithm. And now for 2025, the big key is AI. AI is now the screener. You know, you might be talking to what you think is a real person, but it's an AI. And so they are being used now to eliminate people, right? So because so many people now are doing that, the competition has grown exponentially, but at the same time, you may be the perfect candidate, but you're going to get lost in the weeds and they're never going to get to you because you're applicant number 634. Recruiters are inherently lazy. They will get the lowest hanging fruit and throw it over to a hiring manager and see if he picks somebody from there, not the next lowest fruit. So you don't want to face those odds of all those hundreds and hundreds of people that you're competing against and never getting the opportunity to be seen, right? you need to be talking to somebody who, again, if you're using a resume, people will look at you with blinders and say, oh, you're in lane XYZ, we do ABC, therefore by default, you're not qualified, which is totally wrong. I've had clients of mine that have pivoted 180 degrees into roles from president, CEO levels all the way down to middle management, and they got jobs with absolutely no experience in that industry. So it can be done. And if you want to pivot, you have to talk to people so you can talk to them about your value proposition so you can sell yourself. You can sell yourself better than anybody else. So tell your story.
That's true. I mean, making a pivot, networking is so key. I remember we worked with a 94 grad. He was VP of sales and software, wanted to make a big pivot into crypto, tried it on his own, tried applying. Everybody said, no, you have no experience in crypto. We connected him with 25 academy grads in crypto. And it was that 25th call he had. He was introduced to the CEO and he got the job. So let's talk about, you're now with CareerNerds for, I guess, the last 3 years, right?
Right.
On our team. And you've been coaching, onboarding people, bringing people into our program. What have you seen been the top 2 or 3 things that make people successful doing it the right way?
I would say the key thing is trusting your coaches is one, because they have a lot of experience. They're very well experienced in different industries and coaching people and helping you to develop that story.
So being open to feedback from other people and listening and having them as a sounding board, right?
Exactly. You know, if you were an expert, you would have done it yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why you came to us. So trust the process that we have, and the ones who put the work and the effort into it and are dedicated and stay with the process, they find success sooner, right? So that are the key elements. Trust your advisors, be open to change, and trust and keep working the process, even when things look down. But that's why you have a coach to go and talk to and discuss, why am I failing here or whatever. We have all the tools, we have all the resources to help you get better. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I find it so interesting. When we were at West Point and in the military, we work on a team. And we succeed because we have a team-oriented approach. But when people get out of the military and start their corporate careers, they're working on a team in companies. But when they're thinking about their job search, they behave like it's a solo operation.
Yep.
And that's why they don't have success. You got to build that team, right?
Right. I tell people, look, just like back at West Point, it was cooperate and graduate.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody got through there by themselves. So I say, why are you trying to make this a solo sport when you have all these resources, these experts to help you succeed faster and find the right type of job, not just a job, but the right type of job that fix all your check boxes like that. Make this a team effort. There's no sense in trying to beat your head against the wall and do this by yourself, because you're not getting the effective feedback if you're going down the right path or you're doing it the right way. And it ends up just being wasted mental energy and time is your enemy.
Right. Maximizing the time is really important. Also, one thing I always tell people who sign up with CareerNerds, I tell them there's no magic pill, right? And really, you can't sign up for a program or a course and think they're going to do the work for you. You've got to enjoy the process of networking, selling yourself, turning into, you're the biggest advocate, biggest champion for yourself. Nobody else will be. And one thing that helps is really enjoying the process, enjoying networking. I can tell that you enjoy networking, meeting people, helping people. How can people get to where they're enjoying the networking process? Because for a lot of people, it's not natural. And they also have misconceptions about networking. They think that it's going to happy hour, being like the most popular person in the happy hour, but it's really not. It's really about having one-on-one meaningful conversations with people where there's an exchange of value, preferably with decision makers that can actually help you in your career. So how can people enjoy their networking process?
Well, first we tell people is just talk to people you're comfortable with mentally, right? Your spouse, your kids, they may be grown, friends, a neighbor, your roommate from school, right? Whatever. People that you won't feel anxiety levels being rising. So that'll get you into the practice of it. Secondly, by understanding the process of how to conduct a networking call, when you learn that and you understand and you feel comfortable with the process, you will naturally start to get that confidence that I know how to do this because I've been coached. I'm getting feedback on how well I'm doing and how well I'm not doing, right? So that's how they can get to enjoy it. because then it becomes almost a part of them, like breathing. It just becomes natural, and they get better and they get better and they get better at it.
I like how you said that. So first, contact people that that you're comfortable with, then branch out into developing that as a process, most likely using the 20-minute networking meeting by Nathan Perez. Great framework, five parts to the networking meeting. Most important is the thank you and follow-up at the end, which a lot of people neglect. And I think also a lot of people struggle with this. They think of their warm network and their cold network. And they don't think that the gold mine is actually in the lukewarm network, people that they might have worked at the same companies, the same alumni. So that's what we built CareerNerds on, connecting with academy grads that are of similar industries and companies, right? So talk about why that lukewarm network, that middle ground of where you have commonalities, but you haven't met them, why that is where people should focus their time and efforts on.
Well, familiarity with individuals, in terms of the type of work they've done, or that they know you've worked with certain people that they trust and have worked with in the past. Nothing beats having familiarity or confidence in those people, right? So with that, people will have a preconceived already vision of who you are and what you're all about, right? And it's always positive, right? Well, it should be 99% of the time positive.
Because you're building on commonalities, yeah.